All right, we are recording. My name is Brian King, and I'll be moderating the speaker series for January in Orissa, Texas. Today we have Chris Aiken. He is going to be presenting on acting professional, behavioral tips and tricks no one teaches you. Chris is a GISP. He's been doing this a long, long time. He's also the GIS manager at Dunaway and Associates, and has about close to 20 years of solving business challenges and GIS solutions and providing amazing input to clients across the state of Texas, New England, and other places in the United States. So, Chris, we're real glad you're here with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and we appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate it, Brian. I want to thank everyone for joining today. I think we've got a really good attendance. So as Brian said, I'll go ahead and introduce me a little bit. If the pages turn. They're not turning. There we go. He covered this a lot. So I'm Chris Aiken, the GIS manager here at Dunaway Associates. I've been working in the GIS industry for about 20 years. And, I've been chairman and president of Orissa, Texas, as well as the New England chapter before I moved back down to Texas. But from a broad stance, I've been very involved in a lot of different organizations, a lot of conferences, even some international symposiums, like the Open Geospatial Consortium, where we would meet all over the world talking GIS standards. So I always say that just to kind of give a little background that I've been around the block for a while, and want to pass on some of this knowledge that I've gained along the way. My take on about you, if you're here listening, what I've kind of, a lot of you have a lot of education, a lot of training, hopefully had some mentor along the way, or at least a good leader to point you in the right direction and give you some guidance, hopefully anyway. Now as you're progressing through your career, and maybe you're not even there yet, you're still entry level, but some of you may be further along, starting to expand your involvement, and that's increasing meetings and involvement with other colleagues, with new clients, new vendors, things like that. But you're starting to get more involved in the organization, or soon will be. Hopefully you're attending more conferences and industry events, more seminars and some symposiums. But kind of the purpose today, what I want to talk about is kind of, has anyone ever really mentored you on making the most of these opportunities, to really sit down and guide you on some tips and tricks? And off of that, I realized, that there's certain things that professionals do along the way that they do time and time again, but they're often not ever discussed. They're not ever really passed from one to the other. And over my 20 years of being around offices and conferences and meetings and such, I've had to really watch and absorb and learn on my own, and a lot of trial and error. So that's why I put this together, and I really want to see what I can do to pass this on to you, no matter where you are in your career. Maybe take something away from this, and hopefully expedite your professional growth. Just make you a little more comfortable in some situations. Just to advance you a little bit more. These are a lot of conversations that I've had one-on-one with people. This was my opportunity, I figured, to pass on some of my experience and maybe some of my mistakes that you can learn from along the way as well. So what I want to talk about, I kind of broke it down into two parts. One is what I'm kind of calling the obvious stuff, the stuff that people do talk about, the stuff that people are already kind of know, they get led on, but whether it's working attire, attending meetings, social media, common sense things that I would hope would be common sense. But then we'll get to the meat of it, and this is what I'm calling that secret stuff, the tips and tricks that nobody talks about. And what I want to kind of cover is talking about business cards, the value of those and handing those out, attending meetings, some good advice on those. Conferences, that's a big one for me, for being able to how to attend those, how to make yourself more comfortable with those. Your network, your professional network, kind of leveraging LinkedIn to expand on that as well. And then if we have time, I've got several other little bullets on some other tips and tricks. So talking about the obvious stuff, I say they're obvious, but oftentimes the stuff that goes unsaid needs to be said. So it's worth kind of bringing up every once in a while. So that's where I wanted to just kind of glance over these. I won't spend a lot of time on them. The first one is dressing appropriately at work. It's one that gets discussed a lot, but first and foremost, I will say, know your company. Every company's different on their professional attire and what they do. You know, some are going to be very casual jeans, and especially if you're working from home, that's one thing. You know, but typically most organizations are going to be business casual. And what that means is, especially for a guy, it's polos, button-ups. You know, it's not jeans. I'm really against T-shirts at work. Even casual Fridays. You know, you kind of go with the company. And, you know, if jeans are okay, jeans are okay. But you always kind of still think about it even appropriately. I put in here, tuck it in. And that's one of those things that I kind of would think needs to not be said, but I have worked with people that are dressed very smartly, slacks, button-up shirt, nice shoes. They look really good, but they've got their shirt untucked, and it just looks sloppy. You know, and it's depending on what environment you're in. You may have clients come by, or the head of the company or your city manager drops in and wants to chat about something. That extra little step just shows that little bit of professionalism. But again, I always want to say, know your company, know what their status is. And just always kind of keep in mind a thing I heard along the way is you don't wear the same thing to the beach that you wear to a wedding. You know, you may not want to dress up for work, but you know what? You're in a work environment. If you're going in front of a big meeting or big presentation, you're going to dress appropriately. You know, if you're sitting at home, working at home, you want to wear a baseball hat, shorts, and T-shirt, you know, that's fine, but you got to kind of know where you're at on those things. Meeting attendance. You know, meetings, we can have meetings till the end of the earth. But one thing I talk about when attending these is first and foremost, know why you're there. You know, why were you invited? There's nothing worse than somebody showing up for a meeting and then we kind of go, well, what am I doing here? Well, if you don't know why you're there, you know, should you even be there? I also pass that on to if you're going to invite somebody else, make sure they know why they're there. Simple things, show up early. You know, let's get this meeting started on time and let's end it on time. People have busy days, full days. This is really important if you're leading it, but also if you're contributing to that. You know, you need to help them have that hard stop. You know, maybe the room's booked afterwards. Obvious things like bring a notebook, take notes. You know, you look really professional, you know, being able to write things down, who attended the meeting. It also shows that you care. You're looking at people as they're speaking, you're writing things down, and it just kind of shows you're really involved in it. And there's nothing worse than saying, hey, can you do that? So he says yes. And you don't see him write it down. Well, then how much commitment did I really get out of him? You know, especially if you're leading a meeting, test any technology ahead of time. I mean, as a speaker series, you should, you know, we have several meetings just to test the sound and audio and quality. And, you know, while it doesn't always go right, you know, it's little things like getting ahead, especially if you're going to do any Skype meetings or any kind of conference calls or anything like that. Just test it ahead of time. And then lastly is create action items. We're not having meetings just for the sake of talking. The purpose of a meeting is to advance things on. So create action items and really work on following up on them. You know, let's not make it just a checklist. Let's make sure people are actually executing those. The next one is social media. You've all heard about the problems that can be out there of what you share and all. So much is available on social media about you, but now also you are now a reflection of your company. And anything you're posting can also then be reflected to whomever you work for. So just be aware of that. You know, and I'm not saying you can't share everything, but just be aware of what's private, what's not. And once you publish something, it's out there. Off of that, LinkedIn is not Facebook. You know, LinkedIn is a great professional social media platform. I'll talk more about it later. But utilize it for what it is, for business, for networking. You know, Facebook is where you show pictures of your babies and things like that. But just keep that separate. It's a good idea to keep in mind. So the last one here on the obvious stuff is what I'm going to call things that I would think would be common sense, but these are all actual true stories of things that I've encountered along the way. Eat your own lunch. I've literally had it where an employee of mine put a half-eaten burrito in the fridge and somebody decided to eat it. Yes, they ate somebody else's burrito. Or we've had somebody that opened up somebody else's lunch, took a bite out of their sandwich, decided they didn't like it, the other person's sandwich, and put it back in the bag and put it in the fridge. So this person opened a sandwich with a big bite taken out of it. Clean the dishes and trash off your desk. And Messy desks, cluttered desks, that is what it is. And mine by no means is perfect, but, dirty coffee cups and things like that. I had a coworker that used to keep every Snapple bottle that he drank every day at lunch on his desk, to the point that by the end of it, I think he had about 50 Snapple bottles on there, just unnecessary, unprofessional. I had an old professor that would never wash his coffee cup. So every day it would just get dirtier and dirtier and thicker, and he, it was just not looking good. Onions do not kill germs, so please don't slice them open and place them around the office. Yes, I've worked with somebody who thought this was the best thing to do, and so now the office smelled of onions. She's placing them around the cubicle walls and things like that. Things you'd think with common sense, but not necessarily. And finally, don't wash your clothes in your cubicle. Don't hang them to dry, and please don't change your clothes in your cubicle. Yes, I've worked with people who decide that's the best place to change for the evening and things like that. Again, I would think these be common sense, but I'm going to say them anyway because I've experienced them all. All right, so now let's get to the meat of this. What I really want to talk about is kind of some of the secret stuff, the stuff that not everybody talks about that we really want to kind of harp on. And there's the Mark Twain quote of good decisions come from experience. Experience comes from making bad decisions. And this is where maybe I can help guide a little bit to maybe some of my experience, some of my bad decisions or things I've learned can guide you along this and can I get you there quicker. All right, business cards. Business cards, you'll hear some people say, oh, I don't use business cards, they're dead. In my opinion, business cards aren't dead. They are a valuable, I won't say commodity or thing to be able to hand out. It's a great document to just help with that connection with somebody when you meet them. It's a great way to have a physical reminder of who you met, who was there, who you need to follow up with, and just having that stack to be able to kind of look through later and go, okay, yeah, I remember all these people. It's just a great physical reminder of that. I say always have some with you, especially when you're going to any kind of meeting or conference. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of how to handle business cards with those later. But always having some with you. I mean, I always carry a couple in my wallet. I've got some in my, like literally in the case of my phone. There's in my laptop bags in my car. They've even come in handy, not even work-related things where, I'm at a kid's soccer game and talk to somebody and we want to get our kids together and, oh man, I don't have a pen, how to change it, hey, here's my card. At least, I know they can reach me through that. And that's paid off already. Maybe you work with a company that doesn't buy into business cards or you're brand new or you're unemployed and looking for a job. You can make your own business card. And I've seen plenty of people who've done it. I've done it myself for other things. They're not that expensive. You can make several hundred business cards very cheap through these places, and you just go online, you design it. That's the Wile E. Coyote one there. Have brain will travel. Hey, especially if you're looking for a job, whoop, here's my card. It shows that extra little professionalism. And they don't take a lot of effort. They don't take a lot of time. They don't have to be perfect, but it's just something to keep out there. Another big tip that I want to talk about is taking notes on a business card. Most business cards are white and they're blank on the back, and they're a great opportunity to write down who you met, when you met them, what you talked about. You got the card from Bob. We'll flip it over and say, okay, I met him at this seminar on this date, and we talked about that. And I want to follow up with him about that. He had some great ideas. Because when you get home, whether you've met 2, 3, 4 people or 400, or you've gone to the Ezra User Conference and your mind's exploded and you're exhausted, and you may not look at those for a day, 2 weeks, a couple weeks later, and you kind of go, okay, who was this guy? What did we talk about? And you flip it over and you see the notes. Oh, okay, here's what we talked about. And oh, he had some great resources that would help me with what I'm doing right now. Or, hey, that person's looking for a job. They might fit my company really well. And off of that, obviously, bring a pen. You can't take notes if you don't have a pen. And again, that's one of those things that might be obvious, but, it's not always. And as far as taking notes, what I tell people is there's nothing wrong with doing it while you're sitting there talking to the person. When you've got their card in your hand, say, hey, you can just start writing on the notes. Say, hey, man, I really want to make sure I follow up with you on this. I'm going to just write a few things down. It's almost honoring them by saying, I value our conversation. and want to follow up with it. It's not insulting. It's not awkward. They're not going to be put out that you're kind of pausing. You're listening to them like, hey, we talked about RTS Online, or we talked about this. Just it helps facilitate that. And then when you get back to your office or whatnot, I say scan them. Once you scan them, you can trash them. You don't need them anymore, but it's a good way to document them and get them into your system for just your tracking and your follow-up. But then follow up with that person. Getting a business card only goes so far, but follow up with the person. Shoot them an email. Hey, great meeting you. Connect with them on LinkedIn. That's how you build your network. And that's why that card is handy. It's kind of almost like a physical checklist. Okay, I've got that person. Now I need to follow up with them. I'm done. I can trash it. And then, but you still got to work on it later. So the next thing is attending meetings. We're all in a lot of meetings, some, full days of meetings. And those of you who are new or, early in your professional career, trust me, it's going to get more and more. You're going to get more and more involved. And so some advice on that is when you're entering a meeting, as obviously as it sounds, just introduce yourself. Reach out, shake the hand of everyone that's in that room. And then also introduce maybe your coworkers or anybody is with you that's maybe not taking that initiative to do so. Make them feel welcome. And there's nothing worse than when somebody walks in and I'm already in there and then they just go and sit down and maybe they know a lot of people. It's like, well, I have no idea who this person is who just walked in. Are they, where are they involved in this? And so just even that quick, handshake, hey, I'm Chris Aiken with Dunaway, or, good to meet you. They introduce themselves, and now you can figure out where they connect, and you kind of get a name. So off of that, this is another little thing I've learned, that, if you forget somebody's name, it's okay. I am horrible at remembering somebody's name the first time, and I've just learned that, and I've accepted it. So what I've really learned is I just ask again, and I'll even make a joke out of it, and just apologize and say, hey, tell me again your name. I can never remember it the first time, and I've never had anybody get upset by it. They laugh. Oh yeah, no problem. And what I found is I would say 75% of the people that I'm meeting don't remember my name as well. They're just as bad at it, but they're too worried to admit it. So by me showing that vulnerability and saying, hey, sorry, I don't remember your name. What is it? It opens up them to say, oh, I appreciate it. I don't remember yours either. And I'll give you a real example of a mistake I made long ago when I was young. I was in some meetings at work that started getting compounded. Now you have a second meeting and then a third meeting. And trust me, when you ask at the beginning of the first meeting, it's not that bad, or even beginning maybe of the second meeting. But when it's the fifth, sixth meeting, you should know their name. And I was too young and stupid to realize I should ask. And there was I ran into one of the guys in the cafeteria at one point, and he was like, hey, we need to get together and talk about that. And he goes, can you shoot me an email or shoot me an invite? I said, well, yeah, that's great. I didn't remember the guy's name, so how can I invite him to a meeting if I don't remember the guy's name? So I said, well, I'm actually going somewhere else. Shoot me an email so I don't forget. And he kind of went back and forth. And I'm going to a meeting. I can't. We had this back and forth. If you reach out to me, no, you reach out to me. And finally I said, okay, I'll reach out to you, no problem. I'm not going I have no idea who that guy is. I felt horrible. So I ended up calling a guy that worked in his department that I knew. And I was like, hey man, can you help me out? He was like, are you thinking about this guy? And yeah, I think that's him. And he pointed me in a direction, and we were able to connect. But years later, I ran, that guy and I were good friends. We were talking about it, and I told him the story. I said, yeah, actually I didn't know your name. And he laughed. Apparently he didn't remember my name either. And so we're sitting there staring at each other, and if either one of us had manned up and just kind of admitted, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, we would have both been a lot happier. But both of us were too stubborn to admit we were ignorant. So that was a huge lesson for me, that moment, kind of going, you know what, it's just better to ask. So the last thing off of that, and this is where it ties to the business cards, when you're at the beginning of a meeting, it's not awkward to hand out business cards. And I'm going to speak specifically for meetings. And this goes whether you're internal meetings, whether you're with people within your organization, whether that's you're in a private sector. And, I used to work in a corporate office of 900 people. Man, there's a lot of people we'd meet. Or you're even in a city department and you're meeting, people from other departments and city managers. hand them a business card. And this also goes true if you're meeting with a client or a vendor. You know, hey, I'm Chris Aiken, good to meet you. You know, here's my card, and they'll give you one of theirs. And it really helps with that connection and really knowing who those people are. So off of that, you got to have them with you. The number of people who don't bring those cards with them, I mean, it really kind of takes that hindrance, and it makes it that easier to not know somebody's name. So just having that card just kind of really helps that pass along. And it may seem awkward at first, you know, kind of handing them out that quickly, but for a meeting, it's really not. And if you're not comfortable at the beginning when you haven't really met that person, it's okay to do it at the end. Hey, I really enjoyed this, or I know we didn't have a chance to meet too much, but, you know, can I grab your card and we can follow up? So it's awkward the first few times you do it, but then you start to realize it's kind of a social norm, you know, in a business world, that handing out business cards are not a bad thing. So that's one that was kind of a big thing I had to learn, you know, by watching, kind of going, it's just, you know, people sit down, hey, whoop, 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 they kind of hand out the cards, you know, as they get a meeting started. Here's another bit that I only learned just from watching, just from learning. So I'm going to pass on this to you, that when you're in a meeting and you get a bunch of these business cards, one of the tricks I learned was to line them up in the order that the people are sitting. In this case, you know, the kind of example I saw here, you know, it's a long table, so I'm going to kind of line them up to the way the people are sitting, you know, or if it's in a curve, you know, maybe I can curve it in front of me or in a straight line. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's very obvious what you're doing. You are trying to match that card with that person in the order that they're sitting. And you'll see CEOs, you'll see city managers, you'll see seasoned professionals do this. And it'll be very blatant sometimes. They'll look at the card and look at you and say, okay, Chris, you know, they didn't know your name a second ago, but they have the card and they can look at it. You know, and from a comfort level, me looking at a card and looking up and say, Susan, you know, they know you just met them. They know you're still learning all these names, and it's okay for you to kind of remind yourself. Obviously, you're not going to, hopefully not do that the second and third meeting you're meeting with them, but that first one, it's okay. And being able to look at that, you know, you're also being able to, and this is where that business cards come in. Okay, this is the director of IT, and this person's the Department of Public Works, and, you know, this one's the GIS technician. You know that card is a physical reminder, or is written on there, what their roles are, and therefore what interest they have in your project or your meeting, and just lining them up into it. So really keep that in mind when you're in these sessions, especially with new people, being able to line those up. And it's obvious. It is very blatant what you're doing, but it's very effective. All right, let's talk conferences. Conferences are something I'm very passionate. I'm going to lump in conferences and seminars and workshops and all, anything where you're going to that you're kind of expanding your professional involvement. There's so much that opportunity here with conferences. We really want you to make the most of them. And I'm not going to get into the education and the training and vendors and all that good stuff. I'm really going to talk about the kind of the networking and getting to know people aspect. There is such a value to that. And I would say the bulk of what happens in a conference is out in the hallway. That's where you make your strong connections. I remember an old boss of mine, he and I attended a conference, and I said, hey, you going to go into this workshop? He goes, man, I've seen that workshop before. And I was like, well, you haven't seen it? I said, no, but I've seen those workshops before. You know, they change, they adapt, but I'm going to go and engage with some of these people over here I had met. And there was such value in that conversation. You know, now you go to these, you know, sometimes you get lost in a conversation in the hallway, and just, it's so beneficial. So conferences, seminars are a great place to meet people. You got to keep in mind, everyone is there for the same reason. Everyone is there to learn about their industry, or their, you know, the purpose of that seminar or conference is X. Well, everyone's there to talk about X. So think about that. That opens the door, and it affords you the opportunity to talk to anyone there about that. You may branch off into other conversations, but it's a great opportunity. Hey, how are you guys using this? Hey, good to meet you. What are you guys doing with your organization? Oh, wow, you're doing that. We haven't done that yet. We want to, or, you know, wherever that goes. Realization I've had along the way is that I would say probably 80% of the conference are there that are either alone or with one other person. And, you know, which means they're basically by themselves and they're feeling out of place. You know, 20% of the people that are there are very active. They're very involved. They know a lot of people. They've been around. And what it is that 20%, they're moving and shaking and they're dispersed throughout the conference. And you see them talking to a lot of people. And that 20% makes it look like everyone knows everyone. And in reality, they don't. Maybe, there's those hubs. One person knows a lot of different people, but those other people don't know each other. So once you realize that, it opens your eyes to say, wow, there's a lot of people here that are thinking the same thing I am. They're talking about the same thing, and they actually want to meet people as well. So it's a great chance to go and talk to them. I was talking to someone just the other day that was at the Esri conference, and she saw somebody else walking by herself and just went up and said hi. Wow, how do you think that person felt? It's like, wow, I'm engaging with somebody new, and now they're still chatting, and such value in that. So this is what I kind of talk about. Really think about expanding your network. It's people from different organizations, from different companies, from different cities, doing the same thing, maybe above you, maybe below you. You can help each other out, but also there's that comfort in saying, misery loves company. The fact that, people want to help each other out. And sometimes you just want to commiserate with somebody or vet what you've been doing, and maybe they can help you out. But just sometimes having a beer and just talking about your problems is very helpful. All right, so a little more about conferences. I'm going to use the analogy of talking about stretching your rubber band. Everybody's got a comfort level of where they are on social interaction, outgoingness, or presentations, or all of that kind of stuff. Some people have a very small rubber band, and they're not a lot of comfort level in it. Some people have a very large rubber band, and they have no problem with that. But the other thing too is those rubber bands stretch, and both of those may have a high stretch or a low stretch capability. And some people, their natural tendency is not a lot of interaction, but man, they can really stretch that rubber band, push themselves out their limit. But you know what? At the end of the day or the end of the week or whatever, that rubber band snaps back into place, and that's back their natural tendencies. So what I always try to encourage people is think about your rubber band. Can you try to just stretch it a little bit more and just push yourself maybe a little bit more outside your comfort zone, or just what you are comfortable with? So ways to do that is, when you're at these events, I would say walk around. Don't just go and sit at a table. I couldn't tell you how many events I've been to all the time that you walk in and they've got those big, 8 or 10 person round tables, and people just go and immediately sit down. Dinner, lunch or whatever is not going to be for another 30 minutes or an hour, but people go and sit down. What a wasted opportunity. You have such the opportunity to go and engage with other people, to go and talk to them. Go grab a cup of coffee, and while you're in line, talk to the person next to you. You just sitting there makes you almost kind of not open to a discussion unless somebody happens to sit down next to you. And so off of that, when you do sit down, what I often recommend when you go to these events is don't sit with your friends. I say don't always, because, you're going to want to sit with your friends occasionally. But, when you go grab lunch, I can go grab lunch with my coworkers or my friends any day of the week. But when I go to some of these other ones, there's something valuable about sitting down with people I don't know, because that's how we build that network. They're going to be able to talk to you about what they're doing and what you're doing. And this, again, that misery loves company, and you'll be able to chat them up. And I was at an event not long ago, and I sat down at this, I think it was a 10 top table, that 8 or 9 of them were all from the same organization. And it was a very awkward conversation because they were all talking amongst themselves, almost ignoring me. And then anytime I talked to one of them, I couldn't get any information out of them. And it's a tough one to do. And I'm thinking, what a waste of opportunity. You guys could talk any day of the week, but you guys need to be able to talk to other people here. What is somebody else doing that we are not doing, or vice versa? So off of that, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, is introduce yourself. There's nothing wrong with a conference if everyone's there with the same mentality. Walk up and say hi. You have, snacks and hors d'oeuvres or the happy hours or things like that. Little cocktail tables, people are sitting there having, lunch or dessert. And, hey, can I join you guys? Oh yeah, sure. No problem. Introduce yourself. Join in. It's one of the few places when these conferences, seminars, that it's almost okay to butt into a conversation, because most likely they're talking about what you're interested in. Walk up to a group. It's like, hey, I'm here, and just kind of start listening in, start paying attention to what they're talking about. If it doesn't fit, you can walk away, talk to somebody else. It's a way to kind of start engaging, but you kind of have to put yourself out there to talk. You know, the one thing I'll say, and this goes out to a lot of vendors that are out there, and we've all probably been on the receiving end of this, don't throw out your business cards like you're dealing poker. I mean, I can never forget the conferences or the meals that I've sat down and some guy walks up and is like, "Hi, I'm Bob." They're flipping out those cards to you left and right. Wow, I have no connection with this guy. That business card means nothing to me. Quite often it's that you get that spice and tingling, this is some sleazy sales guy. And I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. They're flipping out cards. So when I talk about, you know, handing out those business cards, especially the conferences and stuff, make sure you have a business connection with a person. Compared to a meeting where it's very open to hand out the cards at the beginning, conferences are a little different. You want to build that connection first with them. You want to talk to them and then say, "Hey, can I get your card from you?" Or, "Hey, I'd love to stay in touch. Here's mine." Don't be that guy that's just, "Here's me," and they're handing them out, because it kills everything. It just makes it awkward. All right, let's talk a little more about your network. Your network is invaluable. This is where you're going to leverage, you know, your future is going to really come from. You have no idea where your network is going to be in the future. You know, what company they're going to be with, you know, what their opportunities they could be doing. You know, that person that you meet today could be a future boss or a potential employee. They could be a client of yours or a vendor. It's a small world, especially when you're talking GIS, but just, you know, it's a small world. I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn that I knew 15, 20 years ago and said, "Hey, I'm a town planner, actually up in New Hampshire, and wanted to kind of maybe start getting a little bit of GIS skills. Can you help me out?" And I said, "Yeah, let me point you to some free training. Here's some classes you can do." I hadn't talked to that person in probably 10 years, and she was able to reach out to me. I was able to give her some advice, and she went and got some certifications and starting to use GIS in her day-to-day operations. You know, but that's where that connection is going to be able to do. You know, the colleagues you can stay in touch with. The other thing I also talk about is you don't know who anyone knows. There's a value in that second degree of conversation of, "Hey, I'm starting to really be interested in an organization." I had literally had somebody reach out to me the other day about a job opening they were interested in and said, "Hey, do you happen to know anybody at that organization?" You know, and I said, "Actually, I do. I'm literally talking to the director of technology right now about those jobs and some other things. I'm happy to introduce you." That is huge. Your network will go to bat for you. But also, and that's that phrase of don't look down on somebody on the way. Don't look down on somebody on the way up, because you might look up on them on the way down. Meaning, things may be going good today and they're reporting to you, but tomorrow your intern could be your boss. So always think about your network and obviously being nice to people along the way. So off that network, I really talk about utilizing LinkedIn. I've really bought into LinkedIn over the last several years. It kind of took a little bit while to get going, but it's really taken off. I mean, LinkedIn is the new modern Rolodex, is the way I look at it. This is the way to stay in touch with people in perpetuity. You know, you may have somebody's email address or contact information, but they leave that company, you have no way to get in touch with them because that email stays with the company. But LinkedIn stays with the person. So no matter what, like I said, I just had somebody reach out to me that I hadn't talked to in 10 years. I've changed jobs a couple times since then. But she was able to connect with, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Some advice too when you're connecting with somebody on LinkedIn. I always say write a message. "Hey, it was great to meet you at this event. I'd love to stay connected." That's literally all it takes. There's such value in that for your sake and theirs. Later, when you go back and look at it and say, "Okay, how did I meet that person?" You can pull up that message and go, "Oh yeah, we met at this event. We talked about that. Oh yeah." And we can see some of that dialogue. It starts the dialogue chain too. And it also is for their reason as well. When they go back and look at, you know, even that initial invitation. Wait, how did I meet this guy? Oh, okay, yeah, that was a couple weeks ago. The number of invitations that I personally get that have no message on it, I have no idea. Sometimes a connection and is just saying, "Hey, we're in the same industry. I'd love to just connect. I love what you're doing." And a little bit of advice to students, and this is something I've seen along the way. You know, students, connect with your professors and your classmates. You know, especially your classmates, they're beginning their careers. You're beginning your career. You've got many, many decades in front of you, stay in touch with them because you don't know where their paths are going to lie. The other thing is, and this is a nice little tip, is get to know your professors, connect with them. Working businesses will get to know the professors, and we'll get together after a career fair and go grab a bite to eat or a drink. Well, when those students come and join because they know that professor and they all like to hang out too, well, guess what students I get to know? The ones that got to know him. And those professors will also be your best advocates. They'll be the ones that will tell an employer, this is a great person, you need to hire them. I have literally had people reach out to me, either old employers or old professors reach out to me cold and said, hey, I know this person's looking at a job there. I really like this person. We're going to miss them. You'll like them. So really think about that. It's a good opportunity, not just on LinkedIn, but just the connection with them. All right. We're doing good on time. So I'm going to go over the last, some random tips I've got in here. So the first one, slow down and think before you speak. This is something personally I really always work on. Not always the best at it. I'm going to give you a story that I wish at the time somebody would hit me across the head with a 2x4. And I tell my employees, sometimes my job's easy with a 2x4 because sometimes you need it. But I wish somebody had done the thing that my old company had flexible hours, and you could come in. You had to be there the core hours, 9 to 3. So you could have come in at 7 and leave at 3. You could have come in at 9, leave at 6, or whatever those times work out. And when I was new and starting, I'd see people get up at 3 o'clock and walk out the door. And I used to joke about the 3 o'clock school bell and, why are these guys leaving? I wish somebody had thumped me on the head. Do you realize that guy's getting here at 6 o'clock in the morning? Chris, you're not getting here till 9. You haven't seen the 3 hours he's been here before you. It was one of those aha moments. And then sometimes the aha moments take a couple years to sink in that, that guy is getting his work done, and me, I need to keep my mouth shut on that kind of stuff. You don't know what somebody else is doing. So any chance you get, slow down and think. It is, for some of us that are drivers that are very direct, that's a harder said than done, but real advice if you can. Next one is talking about taking ownership. A story I tell my new employees are, when you're in school and you write a paper and, the professor says, hey, I need you to write a report. And you go and write that report and then you fail the class because, or the professor fails you. And you go, why did I fail the class? And they said, well, you didn't write the report. Well, no, I wrote it. Well, you didn't turn it in. Well, you didn't ask for that. Well, that's kind of the implied. And this kind of is what goes on with work. When somebody gives you a job or a project, take ownership of it. Your job's not just to do it, but to turn it in, to see it all the way to completion. And what I mean by that is you really need to keep that ball moving. I don't care if you're entry level. If somebody asks you to go and, bang on your keyboard for 6 hours, make sure you bang on your keyboard for 6 hours and then tell them you did it. Tell them that you're done. And I also always say is if there's an obstacle in your way, it's your job to address that obstacle or bring it up to management. And I would say if for some reason I'm in your way, but I'm not responding to something, it's your responsibility to kind of help prod that along. Or if the president of our company is in the way, I will help you prod that along, or you need to push that. But take ownership of your projects. It's amazing how many people aren't doing that. Next one is keep your resume ready at all times. You have no idea when you get a new boss and your next one is not near as good as what you were and you're just done. Or somebody calls you and says, hey man, we have an opportunity that I think you'd be perfect for. Or there's a change in management and all of a sudden you're let go. I just heard about an organization that closed several of their offices right before Christmas. How fun is that? And those people need resumes ready. And that's where I would say, keep it up to date. Writing resumes is one of the hardest things you can do. But once you do it, if you look at it, maybe every quarter, just to keep it up to date, there's a lot of value in that. Next one, headphones. Headphones are okay. While you're working, we all want to zone out, bang on keyboards, do our work. My recommendation is be aware of not wearing those while you're walking around the office. That having headphones in and it's almost like you're shutting out the rest of the world. When you go to the kitchen and you're grabbing a cup of coffee, if there's somebody there, they may want to chat with you, and you got headphones in, whether you're even listening to anything or not. They don't know, so they don't want to disturb you. And it's amazing how many great conversations come from two people filling up a cup of coffee, or you're strolling around the office and somebody says, hey, Chris, while you're here, I wanted to grab you on something. You have your headphones in, you're shutting out the world and removing yourself from those conversations. And I've had conversations where I'm talking to somebody and what are you guys up to? Oh, we're working on a project for this client and we're doing that. I could help you with that. Oh, really? And it just starts. But if you're walking around with those headphones, you're shutting out the world. Next one, thank you notes. Such a simple thing, but they go a long way. Writing a thank you note to somebody because they took the time to do something goes a long way. I'm not saying you have to do this all the time, but if you're interviewing, write a thank you note. If somebody really went out of their way to do something for you, a thank you note is and it doesn't have to be long or wordy. Highly recommend handwritten. Hey, Bob, I appreciate, it was great meeting you at this. I really appreciate you, introducing me to this. I think we're going to have some good opportunities to work together. You don't have to do them often, but just keep it in mind. It's a good thing. All right, lastly, just kind of a high level, want to talk about Outlook. Again, it's one of those things. It's a software almost everybody uses, but nobody's had some training on. So very high level. If you haven't looked at rules in Outlook, take a look at them. You can start to saying any email that's from this, move it to this folder, or start adding categories and classifications or color coding it. It is a great way to start to triage your emails or to file them. There's a lot of great capabilities in there. One of the things that, turn off your message alerts. Let me guess, when we all get back, we're all going to have 100 emails in our inbox. But by turning on only the alerts from, the city manager or the president of the company or particular clients or, key people, then you're only getting alerts for the ones that are high priority. Next one is you've heard the concept of zero inbox, meaning can you zero out your inbox every day? This is one I am very guilty of not doing, and it's one of those ones I wish I'd gotten into the habit of when I was very young. So it's one I always recommend to young professionals or anybody that has the ability to, adapt and change. Try to always zero out your inbox. You may have to triage things, and if you ever get a chance to look at the concept of getting things done, let's say GTD, it's about triaging your emails and how you prioritize this. Is this something I can act on now? Is this something I have to delegate? Is it something I can delete? So the more you can stay on top of your inbox and really stay on top of that, it's a huge thing. And it's hard. It really is. I'm not going to lie to you. But if you get in the habit, and this is the epitome of practice what do as I say, not as I do, because I'm not the best at it. It's something I always try to work on, and I've gotten better at it. Last thing in here is and this is something I always harp on, is keep your calendar up to date. Especially when you're coordinating these meetings and people want to find your time, keep your calendar up to date, including travel time. If you have an offsite meeting for whatever reason at 2 o'clock and it's going to take you an hour to get there, well, then you're unavailable for the hour beforehand and an hour afterwards. Block off your calendar accordingly. Maybe you can do a phone call, but you can't exactly have other meetings or things like that. Whether that's internal, just keep your calendar up to date, because there's nothing worse than trying to schedule meetings with people and there's the 50 emails back and forth. Say, can you do it? Oh, actually, I'm gone this time. Why is your calendar showing that you're free? So that's a lot of random tips. So I want to say thank you all for joining me, for listening to me ramble over the last 45 minutes or so. Hopefully you've taken away some good tips along the way. I'm always happy to talk about all this. Hopefully you can embrace some of my failures, some of my lessons, some of the things I've seen along the way and learn from it, and can take that and progress a little bit forward. So with that, I say thank you, and I'll pass it back to Brian and the rest of the guys.
Very nice, Chris. Sure do appreciate it. I think it's a great conversation. I believe I saw that, Dylan, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. But the high was 97 participants. It could have been more than that. Danielle, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But at any rate, I just want to thank everybody for attending today on a Friday. Chris, great presentation. Trying to see if anybody has any questions here for you, Chris, but it looks like they're just saying a lot of thank yous, and you covered a lot of valuable information that I think anybody who's been in the profession for a long time can reevaluate themselves, and anybody, young professionals entering into the work world can really take and try to make themselves better. Ramon's saying lots of good tips, just a lot of good thank yous here. So anything else you want to add, Chris, or feel pretty good on things?
No, I
Tell
mean,
us
if anybody ever wants to brainstorm, I'm always happy to chat and, leverage other people's experience. That's the best thing I could say.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think staying on top of email is the one that I need to. We can always work on, and the one thing that I've really done that has improved my is for years I just wouldn't go with OneNote, and now I just use it daily, and it just has changed the world on helping me stay organized. So it's definitely can keeps me on top of my game. So well, let's see here. Dylan, are you still on here? Once again, everybody, as you're jumping off on a Friday, I want to make sure that you all know to go to our website. If you want to volunteer, by all means, let us know. I mentioned the city of Lubbock. Contact us. Let's try to work together as Eureka, Texas, and get something going out there with some happy hours and get our traction out there in West Texas. And check our websites out and make sure you know that we are having 3 back-to-back workshops in FME. Really amazing all-day workshops, and there's going to be in Fort Worth, Austin, and Houston. By all means, spread the word, register, come see us. I think it'll just be a fantastic day. And so check out the website, and if you want to get a good workshop, this one's going to be pretty stellar. So
yeah, those are going to be really nice all-day events, and with the Mappy Hour afterwards. Again, today is going to be the last day to register for the normal price at $249. So try to go to the website and register if you're interested.
absolutely. Any questions, you can send it to our email, and we'll be happy to respond. Hopefully we'll see you all at the workshop. Chris, once again, hope you have a wonderful weekend. Everybody else, hope you have a wonderful, safe weekend. We will see you again. Dylan, when's the next one?
The next speaker series is going to be February 18th at the same time, 12 to 1 Central Standard Time.
Okay, and that's a Tuesday. Is that right? We're going back
Tuesday, correct.
Okay. Yep, we had to change it up this time around. I think the first time in the history of the speaker series was we did it on a Tuesday or a Friday instead of a Tuesday, but back to the normal scheduled time. So, all right, you all have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and you all take care. Talk to y'all soon.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, Chris.
Everyone. Thanks. Bye.